for Village Under Siege. The village of Oakhaven lay nestled within a gentle valley, a patchwork of cobblestone paths, neat wheat fields, and humble wooden homes. For generations, its inhabitants, simple villagers with their distinctive long noses and quiet hums, had known only peace. Their days were measured by the rising and setting of the sun, by the rhythm of crops growing, iron being smelted, and books being traded. Two sturdy iron golems, Russ and Boulder, lumbered lazily through the lanes, their metallic creaks a comforting lullaby to the ever-present sound of clucking chickens. Ilara, a young villager with keen eyes and nimble hands, often found herself observing this tranquility from the edge of the wheat fields, a quiet satisfaction blossoming within. She spent her days tending the crops, sometimes assisting the village librarian, and often pondering the strange, vast world beyond Oakhaven's gentle hills. One morning, the sun rose not with its usual warmth, but with a pallid, unsettling light. A farmer, returning from the distant forest edge, stumbled into the village square, his usually placid face contorted in terror. He pointed a trembling hand towards the north, uttering no words, only a series of choked gasps. Russ and Boulder, sensing the shift in the air, slowly pivoted their massive forms, their glowing eyes fixed on the forest line. A chilling, unfamiliar horn blast echoed through the valley, long and mournful, yet laced with an undeniable menace. Panic, cold and swift, rippled through Oakhaven. Villagers rushed from their homes, their peaceful murmurs replaced by frightened cries. The sound grew louder, accompanied by the distinct, heavy thud of marching boots and the snarls of unfamiliar beasts. Pillagers. The word, whispered in horrified tones, needed no explanation. Stories of their raids, their cruel crossbows, and their monstrous ravagers had reached even the secluded valley of Oakhaven. Elder Valerius, his usually wise face etched with worry, gathered the villagers near the well. His hands trembled as he gestured towards the village's sparse defenses, a low wooden fence, barely more than a demarcation, and the two iron golems, valiant but few. Ilara, her heart pounding, felt a surge of fear, but also a strange clarity. This was not a problem for the golems alone. This was a test of Oakhaven itself. Under Valerius's distraught instructions and Ilara's surprisingly calm guidance, the villagers began to prepare. Farmers harvested their remaining crops in a desperate frenzy. Librarians packed precious books into chests, and the blacksmith, his face grim, sharpened his few iron tools. Ilara directed the quick construction of crude barricades from logs and cobblestone, tearing down an unused shed for materials. She urged villagers to gather water buckets, to clear pathways, to bring whatever they could to reinforce the main gate. Russ and Boulder positioned themselves stolidly, one at the main entrance, the other patrolling the more vulnerable western flank. The air thrummed with frantic energy, a stark contrast to the village's earlier quietude. The first wave hit like a thunderclap. A patrol of illagers, their dark capes flapping, emerged from the tree line, crossbows raised. They were followed by a lumbering, furious ravager, its massive head low, eyes burning with malice. The villagers recoiled, but Russ, with a roar of metallic rage, charged forward. The battle was brief and brutal. Russ threw one illager against a wall, but the ravager, agile despite its bulk, slammed into the golem, sending shards of iron splintering. Crossbow bolts thunked into Russ's metallic hide. The illagers, surprisingly coordinated, focused fire, and the mighty golem slowly began to crumple, steam hissing from its joints, before finally collapsing with a resounding crash. A collective gasp of despair rose from Oakhaven. Hope flickered, then dimmed. Elder Valerius buried his face in his hands, but Ilara, witnessing Rust's valiant fall, felt a cold resolve harden within her. They couldn't outfight them. They had to outsmart them. She remembered old village tales, whispered almost as myths, about a hidden passage beneath the central well, a forgotten shaft leading to an ancient, unstable nether portal, used by the earliest settlers for emergency escapes or rare resource gathering. It was said to be unstable, difficult to activate, and long abandoned. Could it be their salvation? As the main pillager force began to gather, an overwhelming tide of illagers and their monstrous beasts, Alara hurried to the well. She found the old worn stone cover, hidden beneath overgrown vines, exactly as the stories described. It was heavy, but with the help of 2 burly farmers, she managed to pry it open, revealing a dark, claustrophobic tunnel descending into the earth. The siege began in earnest. Crossbow bolts rained down, thudding against the wooden barricades. Boulder, the remaining iron golem, stood firm at the main gate, batting away pillagers and smashing vindicators with terrifying force. But the sheer numbers were overwhelming. Ravagers slammed into the barricades, splintering wood and sending cobblestones flying. Villagers huddled in their homes, peering through cracks, fear tightening their throats. Alara, however, was already deep in the tunnel, her only light a flickering torch, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The tunnel was damp and ancient, smelling of earth and disuse. After what felt like an eternity, she found it. A crude obsidian frame, devoid of its shimmering purple core. It was partly collapsed, overgrown, but definitely a portal. Activating it without a fire charge was impossible, and there was no time to craft one. But she had an idea. An illager patrol, perhaps feeling confident, descended into the pit Russ had created, seeking to exploit the gap in defenses. They were dangerously close to the main gate. Alara scrambled back up, her mind racing. The illager captain, a formidable figure with a large axe and a banner emblazoned with a vexing symbol, roared commands, his focus entirely on the crumbling main gate. He urged his ravagers forward, the beasts tearing at the barricades. Villagers screamed, retreating further into the square. Boulder, battered and scarred, was faltering. "The pit!" Alara cried, her voice surprisingly strong. She pointed to the gaping hole where Russ had fallen. Make it look like a way in. Elder Valerius, seeing the desperate gleam in Alara's eyes, understood. He rallied the remaining able-bodied villagers. With axes and pickaxes, they frantically began to widen the pit, strategically weakening the ground around it. Alara returned to the tunnel beneath the well, her heart a drum against her ribs. She had to ensure the portal was primed. She placed a single block of wood and a flint and steel. A last, desperate gamble. She knew a nearby villager had a single piece of flint from a long-forgotten mining expedition. It was their only hope. The pillager captain, seeing the villagers frantically digging, interpreted it as a sign of weakness, of a desperate retreat, and attempted to escape through a tunnel. He roared, urging his forces to surge through the newly enlarged pit. His ravager, a particularly vicious beast, plunged headlong into the widened opening, followed by dozens of crossbow-wielding illagers and axe-wielding vindicators. Just as the captain himself descended, Alara signaled. A frantic villager, guided by Valerius, struck the flint against the steel, activating the portal. A chilling whoosh echoed from the depths, and a blinding purple light erupted from the pit. The captain, mid-stride, stumbled into the shimmering void. His roar of triumph turned into a shriek of disoriented rage as he, and the vanguard of his army, vanished, replaced by the crackling, otherworldly hum of the Nether. Chaos erupted among the remaining pillagers. Their captain, their leader, had simply disappeared into the earth. The sound of distant demonic screeches and the sight of faint orange light emanating from the pit struck terror into their ranks. The remaining ravagers, confused and leaderless, began to charge erratically. Some pillagers turned and fled, crossbows abandoned, their courage broken by the impossible sight. Others, disoriented, fell into the very pit they had opened, only to vanish into the terrifying purple glow. Within minutes, the main pillager force was in full retreat, scattering back into the forest from which they came, their numbers decimated, their morale shattered. The valley, moments before filled with the din of battle, fell into an unnerving silence, broken only by the distant caw of a crow and the ragged breathing of the villagers. Oak Haven was battered, its barricades shattered, its single remaining iron golem a limping, dented shell. Homes were damaged, fields trampled, and the quiet peace of generations was irrevocably gone. But they had survived. They emerged from their hiding places, their faces streaked with dirt and tears, but also with a dawning sense of awe and relief. Alara stood by the well, looking into the still, shimmering portal. The world beyond was dangerous, but Oakhaven had faced it, not with overwhelming strength, but with ingenuity and a quiet, unyielding courage. As days turned into weeks, the villagers began the arduous task of rebuilding. They repaired their homes, replanted their fields, and mourned their losses. The portal, now permanently active, became a silent, shimmering monument to their ordeal, a reminder of the darkness they had faced and the impossible victory they had snatched from the jaws of defeat. Alara, once a quiet observer, now moved with a new confidence, her hands as capable at laying cobblestone for new defenses as they were at tending crops. The village of Oakhaven, scarred but stronger, understood that peace was not a given, but something to be defended always. And sometimes, the most dangerous weapon was not a sword or a crossbow, but a clever mind and a hidden path to another dimension.